Okay, the date is May 8th, 2014, and we have a significant old Quercus lobata valley oak that failed. And what I'm looking at is the cracked trunk here, and I'm trying to see if it was easy to recognize if this tree was a hazard. And from what I can see here clearly on the outside, the trunk is fairly intact all the way around, with the exception that it ripped open, and now the problem is quite evident that there's a lot of internal decay. Now, unfortunately, on some of these old trees, when we were asked to look at them and inspect them, unless there's anything that is clear-cut and obvious, say a cavity or an opening or any sort of fungus developing on the trunk, it's not always apparent that there's internal decay, or in this case I see some white rot and some problems way up in the inside. It is often easy to jump to conclusions as to how potentially decayed a tree is by some of the old wounds. Now, there's some significant old wounds. Now, here's a large section of the tree that ripped off, and this is really interesting because this, I'll bet you there's a old wound right behind this cut here. Matter of fact, I'm going to go down and look at it right now. Oh yeah, look at that. See that, a lot of people could say that this completely healed up, but it didn't. What it did is it covered up an area of internal decay. And if you come over to this side right here, you can see all the white rot and all the fungus right behind that old wound. And that led into the main portion of the trunk, which went all the way down to the base of the tree and led to root rot and long-term problems. Now, when you look at the wood here, the outside 4 inches are relatively sound, and then it goes into very punky, very weak wood. So the tree leafed out quite well. It was fully leafed out and had complete foliage all the way around because it had an adequate amount of cambium tissue, but the internal structure was in very, very bad shape. Unfortunately, the decay led to the complete failure of the whole tree. You see lots and lots of internal white rot, and it just fractured all the way through, all the way back to the base. Now, a question came up: would I have been able to tell if this tree was as bad off as this is? And that's a very, very difficult question to ask, because the bark was relatively intact all the way to the ground. I do see one tiny little void up there, but there wasn't anything that was really significant that would have been able to tell me that this tree was hazardous. Now, this tree was impacted by the big tree when it fell down, and looks like there's part of a playground over there, and there's a prop over there holding this old tree up. That's pretty interesting. But unfortunately, it took out a large section of this tree as well, and I'm not sure if it can be saved or not. Oh wow, there's another prop over here. All these branches are propped up with these steel poles. And you can see where it's actually embedded in the tree. So those 2 poles are holding up what's left of this tree here. That is truly remarkable. Long time ago, they used to fill cavities with concrete, and here is a good example of an old concrete filled cavity that clearly did nothing to salvage the tree. Very large. It looks like what they call an arborist conch. It's a basidia carp. It grows out of old decaying wood. And look at this. It's pretty amazing. Now here's the scary thing about all this. If I had been asked to prune this tree before it exploded, would I have been able to recognize the hazard inside, and would I have sent a man up into this tree? Think about it.